The Second World War was the deadliest war ever recorded in human history. People like you and me were shipped out to the battlefield to fight a war for the puppeteers behind their desks. But what battles within this war were the deadliest? Which battles are considered to be the ones where the most lives were lost? Let's dive deep into the deadliest battles of the Second World War, starting on the Eastern Front. Number 5. The Battle of Kursk. 1 million plus casualties. The Battle of Kursk was a key conflict on the Eastern Front between Soviet and German forces in July and August of 1943. Taking place near the city of Kursk, which was only 280 miles from Moscow, German forces launched Operation Citadel, which was designed to pinch Soviet forces within the Kursk salient, providing the Germans with a quick encirclement and victory over their enemy. Recognizing the design of their deployment, Soviet forces launched a series of fierce counterattacks that quickly and effectively halted the German advance. In the ensuing confusion, Soviet and German forces engaged in the greatest tank combat in history, at its peak involving over 6,000 tanks. Soviet forces were able to inflict massive fatalities on the Germans, resulting in their complete withdrawal because of the Soviets' exceptional bravery and tenacity. The Battle of Kursk was particularly significant in that it effectively terminated German offensive powers on the Eastern Front, paving the door for Soviet troops to advance slowly but steadily for the rest of the war. Scholars currently believe that around 1 million people died or were injured during the Battle of Kursk. The Germans are thought to have lost 200,000 troops during the month-long campaign, while the Soviets lost an incredible 800,000. However, like with other conflicts on our list, these figures do not reflect the battle's complete damage, as a huge number of tanks, weapons and planes were also destroyed. The conflict cost the Germans roughly 2,500 tanks and artillery pieces, as well as 840 different aircraft. The Soviet forces, on the other hand, suffered a staggering loss of 4,000 tanks and artillery pieces, as well as 3,000 total aircraft. When taken as a whole, the Battle of Kursk was one of the most devastating conflicts of the war, resulting in massive casualties and immense destruction on the Eastern Front. Number 4. The Battle of Moscow, between 1 and 1.6 million casualties. The Battle of Moscow was a battle along the Eastern Front during World War II that lasted from October 2, 1941 until January 7, 1942. The Battle of Moscow, which lasted 2 periods, took place throughout the 370-mile sector of the Soviet Union as German forces attempted to seize control of Moscow. Following the commencement of Operation Typhoon, German forces sought to capture Moscow via a 2-pincer onslaught. However, their efforts were swiftly thwarted by Soviet defenses, who fought the invaders with determination. Soviet soldiers held out against the German attack by erecting a series of 3 defensive belts around the city's perimeter. After bringing the German onslaught to a halt with these lines, the Soviets began a series of counteroffensives using reserves from the Siberian and Eastern military districts, resulting in the slow but steady withdrawal of German forces from the area. Although Moscow would not be fully held until early 1943, the Red Army's win over the Wehrmacht in Moscow would be a significant triumph for the Soviet war effort and morale. For the first time since June of 1941, Soviet forces had stopped the Germans in their tracks, effectively ending Hitler's hopes of defeating the Soviets by Christmas that year. The defense of this renowned city would subsequently become a crucial emblem of Soviet resistance against the Axis powers and a major turning point in World War II. In terms of total deaths, historians believe that the Battle of Moscow resulted in 1 to 1.6 million casualties, killed, wounded and prisoner. The Soviets are thought to have lost 650,000 to 1.2 million personnel, approximately 1/3 of these numbers including those killed in combat. German casualties, on the other hand, are estimated to be in the range of 248,000 to 4,000 men. Historians are quick to point out that these statistics are almost certainly substantially higher, since both Soviet and German officials worked to conceal genuine fatalities from public view in the months and years following the conflict. Whatever the exact figures are, one thing is certain. The Battle of Moscow was a horrible fight that resulted in a massive loss of life on both sides of the conflict. It was truly one of the worst engagements of the Second World War in terms of scale and scope. Number 3. The Battle of Berlin, 1.3 million casualties. The Battle of Berlin, also known as the Berlin Strategic Offensive Operation or the Fall of Berlin, was a military battle that lasted from April 16th to May 2nd of 1945. The conflict, known as one of the last major engagements of World War II, began when three distinct Soviet army groups invaded the German capital city of Berlin from its north, east, and south boundaries. After successfully encircling the city, the Red Army launched a fast seizure of the city itself, engaging in subsequent weeks with remnants of the Waffen-SS, Wehrmacht, and Hitler Youth members. Despite the fact that the remaining German units battled with unrivaled ferocity, the unorganized nature of the resistance allowed the Soviets to quickly overwhelm their positions, thereby cutting off a number of German positions. With defeat looming, Hitler, along with several of his top military and administrative officers, committed suicide on April 30th of 1945, as it became evident that victory was out of reach. 2 days later, the city's main garrison surrendered, and on May 9th of 1945, the war in Europe was declared officially over. Historians currently believe that around 1.3 million people were killed, wounded, or taken during the Battle of Berlin in terms of direct casualties, both killed and wounded. Approximately 83,116 Soviet servicemen were killed, with a further 280,251 people injured in action. Similarly, about 1,997 tanks, 2,108 pieces of artillery, and 917 aircraft were destroyed during the fight. In comparison, German casualties are reported to be around 100,000 dead and 220,000 wounded, with a further 480,000 personnel taken by enemy forces. Historians are also eager to stress the importance of including civilian casualties in the battle's aftermath, as roughly 22,000 civilians are believed to have been killed in the fighting, with up to 100,000 or more injured. When regarded as a whole, the Battle of Berlin was one of the most devastating battles of the Second World War, with massive casualties and destruction having a devastating social, economic, and political impact. Number 2. The Battle of France, 2.4 million casualties. The Battle of France, also known as the Western Campaign, French Campaign, or Fall of France, was a major conflict between Axis and Allied forces that took place between the 10th of May and the 25th of June of 1940. Shortly after France declared war on Germany, German and Italian troops launched a simultaneous invasion of Belgium, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, and France, using armored formations to advance through the Ardennes and Somme Valley. The Belgian, French, and British soldiers who were providing support were completely overpowered by this display of force and were forced to retreat all the way to the coast, resulting in huge evacuation efforts at Dunkirk. Despite the gallant efforts of a number of French and British units to repel the Nazi invaders, they were eventually overcome by the German superior air and tank force, resulting in widespread deaths. The Battle of France was devastating to Allied morale in the early months of World War II, as it resulted in the collapse of the French army, the flight of the French government overseas, and the establishment of a neutral Vichy government, giving Germany a significant foothold in Western Europe. Military historians and experts currently estimate that around 2.4 million people on both sides were killed, injured, or captured as a result of the Battle of France. Approximately 376,734 Allied troops were killed, with roughly 2,233 aircraft and over 2,300 tanks being lost. Captured manpower, on the other hand, is estimated to number more than 1.7 million people, resulting in a severe blow to the Allies' war effort. Nazi forces suffered much less fatalities, with around 20,000 men killed, 130,000 wounded or missing, and 1,200 plus aircraft destroyed and 822 tanks destroyed. In terms of the number of people killed or injured in such a short period of time, the Battle of France was really devastating. Both sides of the struggle would be affected for the rest of the war. And finally, on the number 1 spot, we have the battle that is widely regarded as the deadliest ever during the Second World War. Number 1. The Battle of Stalingrad, 2+ million casualties. Nazi forces first assault Stalingrad, modern-day Volgograd, because of its strategic relevance as an industrial and commercial center on the Volga River. Similarly, its name, taken from the Soviet Union's leader, Joseph Stalin, was seen as a politically desirable and symbolic target by Hitler and a German high command, since its destruction would be viewed as a catastrophic defeat for Stalin and the Red Army. Following the start of the German onslaught against Stalingrad, the German 6th Army and 4th Panzer Army, aided by the Luftwaffe, poured massive numbers of troops and armor into the city, turning most of the surrounding city to ruins within weeks. However, due to tremendous and unexpected opposition, the invaders were unable to take complete control of the city, culminating in months of deadly house-to-house battles. Although defeat appeared to be certain at first, Stalin ordered the commencement of a huge counterattack known as Operation Uranus on November 19th of 42. Axis forces were swiftly surrounded and shut off from supplies by this fresh rush of Soviet forces, leaving them vulnerable to attack from all sides. Despite being swamped and virtually annihilated by this unexpected turn of events, Hitler prevented his forces from breaking out or surrendering, ordering the 6th Army to hold its place and fight heroically until the end. Although German soldiers fought out against the Soviet encirclement with some success at first, the utter exhaustion of their ammunition and food supplies over the next months obliged them to surrender of the 2nd of February of 1943, despite Hitler's command. Their capitulation would prove to be a significant turning point in the war, as it signified the first major loss of German forces on the Eastern Front and acted as a huge morale booster for Red Army troops in the months that followed. In terms of casualties, academics now assume that around 2 million people were killed or injured during the Battle of Stalingrad. The Soviet losses are believed to be 478,741 killed or missing, with another 650,878 injured. Similarly, the Soviets are thought to have lost around 2,769 aircraft, 4,341 tanks, and 15,728 artillery pieces. German casualties, on the other hand, are believed to range between 747,300 and 858,374 dead, wounded, and prisoner. In terms of equipment, Nazi forces are reported to have lost around 900 aircraft, 1,500 tanks, and 6,000 artillery emplacements throughout the war. Taken together, it's easy to see why the conflict of Stalingrad was the worst and bloodiest conflict of World War II. These battles have taken millions of innocent lives. But did you know one man is responsible for murdering thousands of innocent civilians through his insane experiments and impulsive aggressions? Click on the screen to learn more, and do not forget to like and subscribe for more untold history.